Hey, Bernie. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Chris. Glad to be here.
I was combing through Instagram when I ran into your profile, and your work brought a feeling of happiness when I was looking through your page. With brilliance in colors and movement in your art, I was compelled to learn about the artist behind the fantastic maze-style paintings. Before we begin, Bernie, where can people see your work?
The best place to go is either my website at amazingartstudio.com. So it's amazing without the A. And I work under the same handle, Amazing Art Studio, on Instagram. And I'm much more active on Instagram for kind of process pictures, but then work is available on my website.
I mentioned in the opening the word maze, and I know I glossed that pretty quickly. For you listeners, the word maze is literally the multiple paths that game you would play with a start and finish. So I'd love for you guys to actually hop onto his website because it won't make sense unless you see it visually. My first question to you, Bernie, is can you tell us a little bit about your art and what it represents?
Yes. So every single thing that I paint is a solvable start to finish maze. So there will always be the word start and the word finish and a solvable pathway between the two. I often have to explain it to people as they will see the giant word start and the giant word finish, but they're just not sure that it's a maze. So I use bright colors, line work, and then I hide designs in there. There's often hidden words in the background. So it's a multi-layered piece that you can take at face value just for the bright colors and the line work, or you can sit there and solve it. So it's interactive. And I work with different companies and brands to use my style and apply it to their messaging.
I've always been interested in how artists land on a particular style, right? Why does Picasso paint the way Picasso does, and Van Gogh lands in that style with the heavy brush strokes? Out of all the styles that could be yours, how did you land into this style of doing mazes?
Yeah, so I never studied art. The last time I took an art class was freshman year in high school. That was required to take. And I started this when I was about 26 years old. I'm 31 now. Since growing up, I always just doodled mazes as a little kid. I loved the creativity. You could make them complex or easy. You could hide some storytelling in there. They could be artistic. They could be straightforward. They could be black and white. They could be colorful. I like the process of the journey of getting from one place to the next, from start to finish. And they just always had that allure to me ever since I was about 5 or 6. So even in my college textbooks, I was looking through them the other day and I had doodles in the margins. So I didn't really start, as I said, until I was 26. And then I decided to paint one on canvas because I was just bored. I was just really bored one day and didn't know what to do. And I just felt the need to be creative because I've always been a very creative person. And now, my late 20s and early 30s, I've been becoming more of an artistic person as well. So yeah, it just kind of happened by accident, and I just kept feeding the feeling that I just want to create things and want to make things. And mazes have always been my outlet and kind of passion. So I just fed that voice in my head that's saying, just keep creating them. And I'm still working on it and still growing and still making things, still making mazes. So it's been a fun process.
It's pretty funny. When I was younger, I would draw mazes too. And I don't know if it was the sense of just a calmness. You can almost design one without thinking too heavily about it. And you're almost in this trance-like state when you're making one. But the funny thing was my maze was hard angles, right? So when you look at it after it was done, it would give you this sense of anxiety. Yours actually, when you look at it, I said it in the intro, it gives you a sense of happiness. It has this fun quality and happy feeling to your work. Now, why that style of maze? Right? Your maze could be really intricate with hard angles, and yours is more loosely designed, and again, gives you a sense of having fun when I see your work.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I do find the process of painting cathartic as well. I blast music in the beginning when I'm doing the design, and then I end up listening to audiobooks or podcasts later on as I'm doing more of the detail work. And I agree. It's this weird kind of cathartic process. And you're right. People do traditionally think of a maze as black and white, hard angles, square, rectangle, something in that size and dimension. But I, somewhere along the way in when I was younger, I started doing these kind of noodle looking pathways that overlap, go over and under each other. And that allows me to make things pop. I can create different colors. Most of the paintings that I make are more than one maze. So each color is its own solvable maze. I painted a 10-foot by 5-foot canvas with 9 different colors on it. So there's 9 different mazes to solve. And then there's 100 words hidden in the background. So it's also a word search. I just kind of accidentally came into this style that I created. I've never seen mazes done this way before, but I just think they needed color. And as you said, I use these bright colors that are almost pop-like because it gives me that feeling of happiness. It becomes a conversation piece. It's interactive with the viewer because it challenges them to solve the maze puzzle. So yeah, I just created the style and been running with it ever since.
What about your process, like prior to even starting this? Because this has art on top of the maze. It's got hidden words, like you said, on the maze. Do you sketch this out prior to even putting it on canvas, or this is something that is in the moment, you're making it up?
Yeah, so like most artists, I have an idea notebook that's just full of 10-second sketches of quotes, words, figures, pop culture icons like SpongeBob, Gumby, characters of that nature. And I just do a quick little idea when it comes to me in that notebook, and then I elaborate on it and expand on it. I use the hidden words in the background or hidden icons to really double down on the story that I'm trying to tell in the piece. So, if there's a piece that I have a piece that says it's all about the journey, and then in the background are all hidden words about the journey of life, things you have to navigate getting from start to finish in life. And I really use that narrative a lot in my work of processes that you try and navigate through. Life is a heavy one. I just came out with a coffee table book that's called From Start to Finish, The Art of Getting There. And it expands on that story. It's 185 pages of different artworks that tell the story of navigating life and navigating finances, navigating love, navigating travel, navigating existentialism, all these different topics that I find really fascinating and applicable to my life, I put into my work and show how difficult they can be to navigate, but you should also have fun and be colorful and enjoy the ride along the way and the experience.
And where can that book be purchased?
So I just had a successful Kickstarter campaign where there was $11,000 in pre-sales for the book. Wow. So right now it's in production, and it should be available to purchase on my website in middle November. So just in time for holiday season. But yeah, right now it's just in production. I'm working a few kinks out, making sure all the colors are as I want them to be. There's mazes running off one page, picking up on another page. So I have to make all the alignment is perfect. And so I'm still doing a little bit of the editing process, but yeah, it should be available about mid-November.
Let me transition to what's the feedback you get from people? Because like if I told this to anybody and said, without looking at your work, hey, would you be interested in buying somebody's art? The maze is like his emphasis. I can see how this can be received really well, but I want to hear from the artist itself. Like you tell me how people receive your work.
Yeah, so it has been a process. As I said, I've only been doing this for about 5 years. And the first 2 years, it was not very actively. It was just a fun outlet for me. And I can't stand the work I made when I started. I think most artists are that way. As my art has progressed, I do more and more coats of paint, finer line work, greater detail, stronger messaging. I just think overall it has gotten much stronger. And as you mentioned, there are those parallels in my work that I think are becoming more and more powerful in the messaging that I enjoy as well. But yeah, it's been a process. I have to explain the work to people often because they're not certain it's a maze. As I mentioned before, I've had a show in Charlottesville, Virginia, a solo show, and there was about half the people who just instantly got it, were pointing out the words in the background, were solving the maze with their, imaginary finger, or there was laser pointers provided as well. I like to provide laser pointers at some of my shows because I think it's a really fun, interactive way to engage with the viewers and the audience. But there is that disconnect of people who just look at it really quickly and do not really explore it with their mind. They just see it as bright colors and line work, and that's fine. Everybody's, looks at art differently. But then there are the viewers who, when they engage with me, they end up really liking my work because of how nuanced it is, how many parallels there are, how fun it is. You can just sit there and solve it. I've had little kids love my work. I painted a 10,000-foot playground on the ground for kids to run around on before, and that was a really big success and a lot of fun to see kids playing on it, and adults as well. So there is that process that I'm working on to make my work just more instantly recognizable, and for the viewers to understand that, yes, this is always a solvable maze. But it's been a challenge as I'm growing as an artist and figure out my messaging and how to make it more concise and more powerful. But I've been loving the journey so far.
You mentioned something there about painting a playground. I've also noticed that you did the front face of an entire building. Like, how does an artist even get an opportunity like this?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I painted a 40-foot building. It was a 3-story building in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And I received that opportunity through the Atlantic City Arts Foundation. They have a mural festival every single year called 48 Blocks, where they hire anywhere from 5 to 15 artists to come and beautify Atlantic City with mural work. And I got involved with them. They liked my work, and I was one of their first artists to really make a piece of that size. And it was an excellent opportunity. I jumped on it. I completed the whole thing in about a week. I was up on the lifts whenever it wasn't raining. And it's difficult as you're starting as an artist to really find out how to get opportunities, because there's 1,001 ways to do something. There's not one way to do it in art, and there's not one way to quote unquote make it. So exploring opportunities and figuring out really how to get work and how to get murals and how to get shows and how to create books and anything that also gives you some sort of monetary value to keep producing art. It's hard to figure out, and I'm constantly getting better at it, but that was a big opportunity I found through a nonprofit foundation. And the playground was also through Ix Art Park in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is, again, a nonprofit arts foundation that hires muralists and has events and works with the community. So I've been finding success in nonprofits that way. But then I've also have a few things with private clients coming up in the near future and brands.
I don't want to leave this quite yet because I'm looking at your actual building that you painted here and your website. How was this? Just talk about that process. Like, I know you say you sketch it out prior, but how do you even make sure this is a solvable maze when you're talking about something that is that big?
So it's actually 4 solvable mazes. There's 4 different colors in that on the building. I believe it was orange, green, blue, and another shade of blue.
Correct.
And each one is its own solvable maze. And it's on this street in Atlantic City that has a lot of drug problems. There's a lot of people on the streets there who use drugs or homeless. And it was actually rented out to be a real some sort of rehabilitation center for a little bit, because the messaging of the maze says, life is a maze, find your way. So I really wanted to communicate with the people who will see that maze most often that life is really difficult to navigate. We run into so many different dead ends throughout our lives that it's easy to get discouraged and depressed and stuck in the same place. So I just really wanted to show 4 different journeys, all overlapping and going next to each other. There's arrows pointing in all different directions to show the parallels of moving up in life, downward spirals, lateral movement, just to express that, we're going in all different directions right next to each other at the same time. And I just wanted to encourage the people on that street to solve their maze and work on themselves and think positively. So there was a messaging and intent behind that based on the location. But that one was interesting because I didn't sketch it out or anything beforehand. That was all just on a whim, just created it on the spot with the vision in my head. But I have done other work where I sketch out the murals before, superimpose it, and submit drafts that way. But this one was just kind of an outlier.
And just the sheer size of this art and the amount of paint, did you have like help assistants like paint in these lines and these color?
Yeah, so I had a few helpers help me for a few hours at a time throughout the process, which was a huge help. People, my dad helped me for a little bit. My friend Matt Crown, my friend Zach Katzen helped me for a bit, and they were great for the whole process. They were helping me fill in the line work, and that definitely saved hours and hours of my time. But that was more of when all the lines were there, and they were just helping me fill it in.
You touched upon this earlier. I'd like to have this transparent conversation with artists, because what makes artists really fascinating to me is that there is not one way to make it, right? How do artists monetize their work? How does one have a full-time career as an artist? And I know a lot of artists want to get there. And that's why I'm excited to share information from one artist to the other. If anybody listens to this podcast, that's really important to me. And so can we talk about your strategy on making art as a career? Because I've heard, let me add this little one part. I've heard artists say it's really strategic. I actually plan out every festival. I plan out every art fair. There's a lot of different things they actually strategically do. Then I hear somebody say, oh, I just do it really loosely, whatever my heart feels like, or wherever the wind takes me. That's how I'm going to just do my career. So how do you plan to do it with your career?
Yeah, I agree with you. When you look at every single artist that you admire or enjoy, their stories are completely different. How they made it, how they turned it into a career, all the stories are different. There's some who exclusively work with galleries, and then there's some artists I know who's never worked with a gallery and have been an artist for 20 plus years. There's people who've focused exclusively on fairs, and that's how they make their money. And then others I know some artists who only do children's books and stories that way. The artist Oliver Jeffers, if I could emulate any artist's career, he would probably be the closest one. He does fine art and gallery work and shows, but then he also does children's books. He has sculpture pieces on Highline Park in New York City. He's from Northern Ireland, so he has some work over there. He takes a stand with what he believes on as a human and as a person. And yeah, that's kind of how I plan on doing it as well. I just, as I mentioned, released that book. I plan on having shows. I plan on doing art fairs. I have a few collectors who are very passionate about my work who invest in my work as well, which has been fantastic. I just had a label design with a sake brewery here in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I planned on doing more brand work in the future, because I can apply this maze style to any company's brand to really sell their messaging and their story of getting from start to finish in any context. That could be on branding, on packaging, fine art, installation work where there's a maze on the floor that goes up the wall and onto the roof and can hide words and icons and tell their story that way. So I am focused on doing a lot of branding work in the future and trying to have a few solo shows and group shows to really get my name out there. But you're right, there's no single way to do it. And I also have some upcoming gigs in China that I'm hoping to solidify in the next couple weeks.
China?
So, China, yeah. I speak Mandarin a bit. I lived in Beijing for a year.
Wow.
I spent a month in Taiwan. So I've been over there before, and I'm working with this company called Rev Art, which is a startup based out of Darden, which is the business school of UVA, University of Virginia. A couple people won like Startup of the Year for this idea that they're trying to revolutionize IP licensing for art. So I've been working with them on trying to get some shows and some installation work and some branding gigs over there. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and some will take, some won't. Every artist can relate to putting 20, 30, 40 hours into a project and then having it declined or shifted to 20% of what the proposed budget was. So I've had all of those things happen to me. I've created something for someone and then they want to pay half price. It's every artist when they're getting started can relate to these things, but I've been navigating them the best of my abilities. And I'm just very hungry and passionate about this and just trying to think as many creative ways to get my work out there as possible.
That's really refreshing, because it sounds like you're really embracing one particular part of being an artist, is that all those opportunities, you're not just putting your eggs all in one basket. You have your feelers out everywhere. You're doing art fairs. You want to do a coffee book. You're doing everything as a way to explode your brand. And I really can see this look that you have here to really be your brand. Like when they look at that, they think of you, right? So that's interesting. Now, you said a lot of things there in that answer that was really fascinating. Like you speak a little bit of Mandarin. You were in Taiwan. Can you give us just your background? How did this? What did you want to do when you were a kid, and how did that transition to you wanting to just be a full-time artist?
Yeah. So in the preface of that coffee table book I mentioned, I actually talk about this, that my career in my early 20s up until now really hasn't made any linear sense. I worked for a hotel in Prague for 2 years. I worked for a Fortune 500 IT company in Philadelphia for a year. I worked for an insurance company in Beijing for a year. I bartended in San Diego for a bit. I worked in Atlantic City. I worked at a nonprofit in Charlottesville, Virginia. So yeah, my journey has been all over the place. I am an avid traveler. I think I've been to like 50 plus some countries. I lived in Europe for 2 years and Asia for 1 year. And I've driven across the US about 4 or 5 times. So I'm very passionate about seeing the world, and I do put that into my work. Travel is a big theme, as well as literature, because I'm a big reader. So things that I am passionate about do make its way into my work. Yeah, it's been a journey. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. My friend Chris that I grew up with, when I met him in kindergarten, he said he wanted to be a meteorologist, and he's a meteorologist now. He's just had that track in his head and knew what he wanted to be. And I am the complete opposite. I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up at 31. And except now that I have found it, it's art. It's I love the expression. I love the challenge. I love the color. The art world, as crazy and nuanced and outrageous as it is, I am finding it more and more attractive and interesting, and I love reading about it. I'm constantly watching YouTube videos during lunch just to educate myself further, because I've never taken art classes or art history or anything like that, as I mentioned. So I am very much this outsider coming into this art world, and I find it fascinating and ridiculous at times, but interesting nonetheless. So
how did you find it? I mean, you were saying you were essentially just, how did you find this passion for art?
I forgot about this one, but I worked at a marketing agency in New York for a little bit too. And when I was living there with like 6-7 guys, we turned every single closet into a bedroom. And we were living in Manhattan, and I had a blank wall, and I was just like, oh, this would be great to just like kind of put a maze on. And I didn't really have a understanding of what that means or how to do it. But then I just went to the craft store, bought a canvas, bought some paint, and made an outline of the world as a maze and put it on Facebook. And at the time it shattered all the my normal likes and comments, had like hundreds of comments and hundreds of likes when everything else I was doing was probably in the 50s. So it just gave me encouragement. And then my friend in Philadelphia, he has a restaurant called Walkworks, and I did one for his restaurant. And then it just kept leading into more and more projects. And then I think it really shifted when I took myself seriously, because for the first 2-3 years, I just thought it was this like, weird little doodling thing that I did on the side. But then as I became more and more disenfranchised with the traditional workforce and the 9-to-5 lifestyle and sitting in a cubicle for 8-9 hours a day, I was just slowly going insane. And I just really looked inward and found that I'm getting a tremendous amount of enjoyment from creating these mazes. And if I could focus on it and increase the quality of the work and just get better at it and think of different ways to communicate my style and my messaging to the greater public and whoever is viewing the art, that I could potentially, turn this into something.
And who are your mentors? They don't have to be artists, but where do you get inspiration from?
Yeah, so I have various inspirational sources. As I mentioned, traveling is a huge part of that for me. I try and go places as often as I can to just really learn about different ways of doing the same thing. And then literature is another huge source of inspiration for me. I've read a book a week for the past 6 years, and that's something I hope I continue for the rest of my life.
A book a week?
A book a week, yes.
Wow. What kind of books do you read?
Everything. And I force myself to get outside my comfort zone with that. So I read fiction, nonfiction, classics, fantasy, you name it, and I'll likely give it a try. I listen to a lot of audiobooks while I paint, so that allows me to do this book a week. But then I also read at least 30 or 40 physical books as well a year. So it equates to at least a book a week. And
wow.
Yeah, I've been going back and reading most of Hemingway's work. But then I'll read a biography, and then I'll read fantasy novels. I love sci-fi and fantasy. That's kind of what I'm drawn to most. Brandon Sanderson is one of my favorite authors. Neil Gaiman, he's fantastic, a writer out of the UK. Yeah, and it just really motivates me and inspires me, the written word. So I have a lot of words in my art as well. So I think it translates well that way. And then I have other sports as an inspirational source of inspiration for me. I was avid soccer, baseball, basketball, surfing, skiing, you name it, I probably have played it. And so that's another source where I get inspiration. And then just conversations with creatives as well. Other painters, other artists, other actors, other filmmakers. I just love having conversations with creative people because I feel like you can just go back and forth between each other and feed each other inspiration and challenge each other to keep producing art and keep getting better. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now, currently.
What does success look like for you? Like, paint that picture for me.
Yeah. So I know there's varying definitions of that based on where you grew up, your family, your goals in life, your expectations. And to me, I don't need to be making $200+ million like Damien Hirst or, Jeff Koons, some of the richest artists out there. Like, to me, that comes with its own set of problems. But, I would like to be financially successful. And I think a large part of that can come from art, but then you have to be smart outside of the art world too, with what you do with your money, investments, property, everything like that. So I do want to be financially successful through my art. That is definitely a main point for me, but it's also having the ability to create and do what you want and design the life that I want to live. That is a huge point for me. I am a very mobile person who likes moving around, who likes traveling the world. But I would like to have an excellent studio set up as well. I had one in Charlottesville for a while, but now I'm kind of in between studios as I'm navigating this new moving process. I'm trying to figure out if I should move to LA or New York or, any secondary art city. I'm not really sure with what I'm doing next that way. So that is a huge part of success for me. The ability to create what I want, paint what I want, partner with brands that I agree with their messaging and their content and what they're doing. Being able to tell their story in my style, that's success to me. Creating friendships and partnerships globally, that's what I found during traveling does to you. I have friends all over the world, and I love that aspect of traveling. And if I can do that with art and create that community within art, that's success to me. I think community is very undervalued in society right now, and the power of community, and specifically an art community, when you have a group of friends who can really critique and challenge and you can just debate and talk about art and inspire each other. I think that's success. But yeah, the definition to me has been evolving over the years as I've been taking art more and more seriously.
There's a lot of great things about being an artist, and some people really gravitate and enjoy the aspects of art where you're mingling and connecting with other artists. Do you do a
Hmm.
lot of that?
So this year, for obvious reasons, has been very difficult to do that. I have engaged with the Atlantic City arts community through that nonprofit Atlantic City Arts Foundation that I mentioned before. And then in Charlottesville, I engaged with X Art Park. They have a interactive museum there, which is kind of like a Meow Wolf concept, where you go in and there's 11 different artists who worked on it. And there's a giant tree, 50-foot caterpillar that you have to walk through. And when you walk through it, there's a big black light maze that I created in there. So I was very much engaged with those 10 other artists that I worked with on that project. And I have found a sense of community there, just in the build out of that project, because it took 3-4 months to do. So that was a very interesting project where I found myself engaged with other artists. But yeah, I'm trying to expand that to, across different cities, to come into some of the bigger art markets where more artists are located, such as Los Angeles, New York, Santa Fe, and some of the other cities around the U.S.
What I love about your art, it's so flexible. Like you literally can put this style to a sports team. You can put it into a corporation, your local coffee shop. Like I can see you partnering with a lot of different brands and entities, and your style has that flexibility. And I saw this thing in particular. You have a Philadelphia Eagles art piece. Do you do commissions? I'm sure you do, but I'm not sure if that's a big part of what you do or...
I do commissions. I do have one collector in Charlottesville who's bought, over $10,000 of my work. He's a big...
Wow.
Yeah, he's invested in my work. That Eagles painting that you mentioned, it has the Eagles logo on it, the image of the Super Bowl icon that they won, and then it has 27 last names of the best Eagles throughout their history. And I created that maze for my best friend as a wedding present, actually. So he has the original in his house.
Wow.
But I had prints made, and they've been selling pretty well as well. But it was more in a poster style for that one. And I'm kind of getting out of that and moving more into the giclée and the higher level prints moving forward. But yeah, I've been commissioning shoes a lot lately as well. I found that I painted one pair of shoes on Air Force Ones, and then they had an excellent, they were received in a very positive way online. And I've had a few people reach out to me to do that. I painted a mannequin for a solo show in Virginia that was in a window display.
I saw that. That was cool.
Yeah. So I painted a globe as well. I've been experimenting on what I can put mazes on. As you said, I painted a building, a 40-foot building, blacktops, canvas, paper, wood. I painted skateboards recently, shoes. I've been experimenting with everything that I can put mazes on. Now it's on a sake bottle as well, North American sake in Virginia. That comes out this Saturday. So limited label for that. And then, yeah, I did a commission. Somebody wanted like a Florida Gators maze. So I did that for them. And I hid in the background all the years that they won the championship, the national championship in basketball and football, and hid little basketball and football icons in there as well. So it is very multifaceted. And I see myself as well being able to translate this into branding and telling different brand stories. But it's, comes with, there's a learning curve. You have to make the connections. You have to put your name out there. And that's what I'm in the process of trying to do.
And again, sorry if I'm just too complimentary of your work. What I like about your work is you can see it, and when you first see it, right? And you can come back a week later if you own one of these pieces and see something else that you didn't see a week prior. And I think that's pretty cool. Let's end it with this. Tell me a little bit about your future plans. Anything you want to promote?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I do have that book coming out. It was a successful Kickstarter, but it will be available for just regular purchase sometime mid-November. That's an excellent place to really learn about my the process, what I've done in the past, and it hints at where I'm going in the future. It's called From Start to Finish, The Art of Getting There, and it's all about my journey as becoming an artist and trying to be the person that I want to be in life. So that's a great place to understand how I do storytelling. There's a little bit of writing in there. I use maze pathways to run off the pages and tell the story. So that's a great place to get started. And there's over 50 canvas pieces featured in that as well. Following me on Instagram is a good place to find out more about my work, because you'll see my brand collaborations. You'll see just paintings I made, designs that I do on Procreate, commissioned work, various projects that way. As I mentioned, I'm working to have some shows in China and some exhibits. All of that will be featured on Instagram, and I will probably have some things written on my website. So my website's a great place. If you're looking to purchase prints, if you're looking for commissions, DM or brand work, that would be better through a DM or an email, which you can do on my website or on Instagram. And yeah, I just see this. There's so many different directions that I see this, which is a maze to navigate in itself. And I'm just hoping to keep going in the direction that I foresee this could go.
Well, I'm excited for you. I can really hear the sense of excitement you have in your voice and your journey down being an artist. Definitely keep an eye out on you. And thank you for sharing us your story. And once again, what was your website?
It's mazingartstudio.com. So MAZINGARTSTUDIO. And I work under the same handle on Facebook and Instagram.
Fantastic. So, awesome,
yeah.
Bernie.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Chris, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I love what you're doing with the Creative Brick Road, and I look forward to listening to you all episodes that keep coming out before and after this one.
Awesome. I appreciate it again. Thank you guys, and take care. Bye.
Thank you.